So, thank you for the introduction. Today I'm going to talk about Adobe Photoshop Lightroom, and I will try to show you everything that you need to know about this application. It's not a difficult application to learn like Photoshop. It's much easier and much more user-friendly, but still there are lots of things that you need to know about. First of all, I would like to just show you a couple of examples why we need Lightroom. Even if you are an advanced Photoshop user, you can still use Lightroom for lots of different things. Just to tell something, in my workflow, I usually, with my own photographs, I spend 90% of the time in Lightroom and only 10% in Photoshop. Even though I'm good with Photoshop and I know everything in Photoshop, I don't need to go to Photoshop because it's much easier and much faster to do most of the things that you need to do with your photographs in Lightroom. So let me show you a couple of examples here. First of all, starting with a photograph that I took in Edinburgh a couple of months before, and I would like to show you that a very bad exposure like this one, a very underexposed image, can be easily turned into something much nicer in Lightroom. So I just switched to the develop options, and I will come back to these options later on. I just quickly show you what you can do here. You can set the white balance quickly, and I just make more space to make sure that you see what I'm doing here. So that's the whole image. And I quickly fill light into the shadow areas of the image. So I add more light in the shadows. And you can see that quickly it turns into a much better image. I also use recovery to see more details in the sky. And I can still play with these options, maybe add a bit more exposure onto it. And we can add even more colors onto it just to emphasize that nice sunset colors. So now if I show you what was it before, I can switch to this view when we can see both of them side by side. I hope it turns up. So no, this is, we need to go back to the panel. I can show you here. So that was before, and this is after. So that's a quite big difference, only by changing a couple of settings here on the right. Let me show you another image. It's a similar image. Again, I would like to change a couple of things here. First of all, also I'm in the develop options, and instead of changing the options here on the basic panel, I can even use the histogram, because as you can see, the histogram shows us that we have lots of blacks and fill and shadows in the image. We have highlights, but we don't have middle tones in the image. So we need middle tones. So I just easily click on the shadow area and I drag it up like this. And it automatically knows which parts of the image has to be changed. I can also move the highlights down to see more details in the sky. And that's it. I can add a bit more color to it. And I can also increase a bit of the temperature. And it's a much better image already. Okay. So let's just see again before and after, just with a couple of changes. Again, I go back to the images. Let's see another image. Let's just choose this one. And it's also, Lightroom is also great to get rid of little problems like dust on the sensor, like this one here. Again, you don't need to do much. You just simply need to use a tool called the dust removal. And you need to click on that point, place this little circle there. Let me just try again. So I just simply click on it, and it automatically samples from the image. So now you can see before and after, it automatically knows where to sample from, and I don't need to do anything. The way it works is that it copies a part of the image, like in this case, this part of the sky, onto the part of the top of this column. So this is how it works. It's like clone stamp in Photoshop or healing brush. But here in Lightroom, you don't need to do sampling. You just simply need to click on the points that you want to get rid of, and it automatically does the job for you. Okay. So this is also a very useful thing here. I can see another one as well. And these options, whenever you create something like this, can be also synchronized onto hundreds of photographs. Because usually when you go out and take hundreds of photographs, you will have these spots at the same place. So you can synchronize it, do it once, and then synchronize it to all the others. I will show that later on. I would like to also show you how to turn an image into black and white. It's just a keyboard shortcut, pressing V or clicking here on black and white. And after you turn something into black and white, you can still play with the options here. You can add clarity and maybe add blacks, and that will create a very nice dramatic black and white effect on your image. So again, let's just see before and after. That was the import state, and that's after we did the black and white conversion. It was really fast, and just to make it even nicer, I will add a gradient on it. I use the gradient filter, and I just drag from the top and add. It's like using a filter when you take the picture, but adding this later on. Without doing any selections or masking, it added that really nice filter on the image. And the great thing is that in Lightroom, everything is completely non-destructive. So whenever I change my mind and I want to play with this gradient, I just need to go back to the gradient. So without change or without saving anything, I can always go back and move that gradient around by selecting that little cursor. And I can even change the options. I can move the exposure even down or move it up. So it's completely non-destructive and flexible. You don't even need to save your catalog where you store your images. Everything is automatically stored and saved. And all your changes are stored in the metadata of the images. So it's also makes Lightroom really fast. You can have like 10,000 images open at the same time in Lightroom, and it will still open up in like 5 seconds. Imagine that, opening up 10,000 camera raw files, like 15 megapixel camera raw files in Photoshop. It would take a life to wait for that. But in Lightroom, it's like literally 5 seconds. So these are just a couple of examples that I wanted to show before we go through all the options in Lightroom. And yeah, one more example. I would like to show you just a quick edit on this image. Okay, so not just landscape, let's just use an image like this one. I also want to have more light. So let's just say you were outside doing a photo shoot, but you haven't had the reflector with you, and you have very dark details here on the face, so you can fill light into that area quickly without increasing the highlights. So let's just see again. You can see we only increase the shadows, but we don't change the highlights, and we can actually darken the highlights in the background by using recovery. Recovery and fill light is very similar to shadow highlights in Photoshop, but I would say it's even working better. And if you want a global change, you can use exposure. For example, if I want to see even more detail in the background, I can move that down a bit and then increase fill light again a bit like that. So by just using these three options here, exposure, recovery, and fill light, we could end up with something much nicer than before. So this was before, and this is after. Okay? And if I want to add special effects like vignetting, for example, that's also just one change. Darkening the edges, it again made a much nicer detail on the image, much nicer effect. Okay? So now that we went through some of these examples, I would like to start from the very beginning. I would like to show you how to create a new catalog. So if you start Lightroom for the first time, how does it look? I will go to File and choose New Catalog. And I will create a new catalog. And I'm just going to call this Academy Class. Okay, and I save it. You can only have one catalog open at the same time. So if you had another catalog, it will have to be closed, and the next one will open up. So now this will be a completely blank, empty catalog, and we will start completely from scratch, importing images. And in Lightroom, it's really simple to import images. There are many ways to do that. First of all, we have the import button here at the bottom. If I click on that one, import, it shows us the import menu, and here we can choose folders on our computer to import images from, and that's what I'm going to do. I just select the Lightroom folder, and I'm going to choose these images that I prepared for this presentation. But if you have a card reader, or if you have your camera plugged into the computer, then you can also choose those devices. So instead of choosing the hard drive, you can choose those devices. Okay? And I'm going to import these images. And I can choose also here on the top what I would like to do with these images. I can choose add, which will just simply add the images, or I can also move the images, the source files, into another folder. In this case, I just simply want to add them, and I click on import. So it will quickly place these images into my catalog. Now you need to understand that in Lightroom, the essential thing is Lightroom is the catalog system. Because if you use Bridge, for example, or iPhoto, or any of these applications, you will probably have your files on your hard drive somewhere, store it in a folder, and have subfolders for all your files. And iPhoto or Bridge, in iPhoto or Bridge, you can browse and search for those folders, go into the folders, and find the images. The difference in Lightroom is that it also uses the source files from your computer. So it also has a structure, a file structure, but it can also see all those files at the same time because it has an option called All Photographs. So even if you import images from lots of different folders from your computer, even after that, Lightroom uses all these photographs together as one big catalog. Okay, so it has a link to all the files on your computer, but it handles it as a catalog, and that's very important. You will see why. So first of all, I imported these images, and you can see those images that we changed previously came with the changed versions. So I can already see, for example, this image already also uses the changed version. So if I check it out, it just needs a bit of time, but it will load in with the options that we used in the other catalog, because it uses the same source file. That's the main thing. So it uses the same source file, Lightroom. Now, once we created or once we imported images into Lightroom, we see all those files here on the left called folders. So here I can go to Lightroom and I can see 39 images came from that folder. So here you can see on my hard drive, these images are located in the Lightroom folder of my hard drive. What if I import new images? Now, instead of importing with the import button, I will just simply go to Finder or Bridge. You can go to any file management applications, locate the files that you would like to import. In this case, I would like to place or import the camera raw images into my Lightroom catalog, and I just simply drag and drop that folder from Finder into Lightroom. It will also give us the import options, and I will just simply import them again. I say import. Now, if I go to the folders panel here and I open Lightroom, you can see that now we have another folder used in our catalog, the camera raw folder, which was inside the Lightroom folder. So I can actually see that structure that I have on my machine, also here in Lightroom. But the great thing is that instead of always going from folder to folder, I can click here on All Photographs in the catalog panel, and that will show all the files in my catalog. Now, you can imagine if we have 7,000 images in our catalog, we don't need to search by folders. We can just simply click on Show 7,000 images, and we will see a huge list of them. But obviously, searching in 7,000 images is really difficult. What can we do if we want to find a specific image? Let's say I know what camera and what lens I use to take that picture. So I have all my images shown in my catalog, and here on the top I can choose library filter options, and first of all I'm going to show you metadata. So I click on metadata, and this is like a very intelligent way to search in your catalog. First of all, it gives us an option to search by date. Okay, let's say I know the image that I'm looking for was taken in 2011. So I select that, and it automatically only shows the images that I took in that year. So I already filtered out lots of images. You can imagine I only have 50 now, but it works with thousands of images as well. Then I have the next option to search by camera. So the camera itself, I know that I took the image that I'm looking for with the D7000. So I select that one. Now I only see 6 images. And I also remember that the lens, or maybe not the lens, but I also remember that it is a landscape image, and it has a landscape format. So instead of lens, for searching for the image, I can choose here aspect ratio. Okay? And by the aspect ratio, I can say landscape. And we come to the image that we were looking for by 3 steps, searching or filtering out all the images in 3 steps. And these 4 steps here can be changed to anything that you have in your metadata with your images. So you don't need to do anything, it's automatic. So even if you are searching by shutter speed or ISO speed, you can also choose that. You know that the image that you are looking for is 1/4 second, and you can find this nice image of a Guinness, for example. And yeah, it makes me always thirsty. So this filtering is really helpful. If you have thousands of images, even then you can easily find anything that you are looking for by using these filters. You just need to remember what you are looking for. And that's a great thing, because believe me, if you do hundreds of pictures every time when you go out and shoot and come back, you may have a really organized folder structure on your computer, but when you are looking for similar images, maybe from the same model or from the same camera or something specific, you can very easily find that if you have everything in one catalog. Okay? And obviously, you can have more than one catalog if you want. You can have a catalog for your professional work, and you can have a catalog for your family pictures. But usually, I keep all my images in one catalog. Now that we know how a catalog works, we also need to talk about what's the difference between a JPEG and a camera raw file. How many of you shoot with camera raw? Hands up, please. Okay. Thank you. So it's half. That's really good. Camera raw is something that came, we started using camera raw like I think 7 or 8 years ago. So that's when this was introduced, this new format to cameras, digital cameras. And let me just go to my examples for the camera raw files. And you can see I have duplicates here. First of all, I would like to show you these images. I just select this image, and this one is a camera raw file. Let me open this one as well. If I have this little film strip here at the bottom, I can see the name of the file. It's a camera raw file. The format is DNG. That's Adobe's camera raw format, the digital negative. Now, there is one big disadvantage if you work with camera raw files, is the file size. It's usually 10 times larger than a JPEG file. Even though the JPEG uses the same resolution, so it's the same high quality image, it's 10 times smaller than the camera raw file, and I will show you why. So that's the only disadvantage though. Everything else is an advantage if you work with camera raw files. So let's just see now. I will develop this image. So this is the original image, again, a very underexposed image. What we can do with this is to use, again, our fill light and just increase fill light, and we can see all the details that was lost here in the foreground. And even though we are increasing a very underexposed image, or we are improving a very underexposed image, we still have a nice quality image. It's a bit noisy. It has a bit of noise to it, but still good quality. And I can do the same with recovery to see more colors in the sky, and maybe a bit of global exposure change. Something like this. Now, this is the camera raw file, don't forget. This is what I could achieve with the camera raw file. What happens if I do the same thing with the JPEG file? Instead of doing the same thing, I just select these 2 images. So this is the JPEG file, by the way. It looks the same as the camera raw file before the changes. But if I select both of them, yeah, by the way, on your camera, you have an option. If you have a DSLR camera, you can choose to save your images into a camera raw format or a JPEG format, or you can also choose to have both of them saved with the same exposure. And that's what I did. So I shot one image, and it saved a JPEG and a camera raw file. And that's how we can compare the 2 formats and see the differences. So now I have both of them selected, and I just simply go to Develop and choose, and here at the bottom I just make sure that they are selected. Yeah, they are selected. Now I just simply click on Sync. Here on the bottom we have an option called Sync, and that will synchronize the 2 images. So I just select that one, and I click on Synchronize, and it copied all the changes from the camera raw file to the JPEG file. And let's just see how the JPEG file looks like. This is what we had with the same changes on the JPEG. So look at that. This is the camera raw. This is the JPEG. That's a huge difference. So this is the same exposure with the same settings, and you can see that the JPEG is useless, while the camera raw file is really nice. So obviously, this is a very underexposed image, so I wouldn't recommend to use this in a magazine, for example. But even though it was very underexposed, let me just show you side by side the two images, like this. So the same image developed with the same settings. That's the JPEG, and that's the camera raw. The main reason why the camera raw file looks much better is because the camera raw file stores much more color information than the JPEG file. So while the JPEG file can store 2 on the power of 24 different colors, which is 16.7 million colors, this one can store 2 on the power of 36 or even more. That's a huge difference. So that's like billions of colors or even more. I can't calculate that easily, but yeah. Yeah, thank you. But that's a huge difference, and that's why the file size is bigger, because it stores so much more color information, the camera raw file. Now, that's just one thing, setting the exposure. You can see with camera raw it's much better. So even a very crap photograph can turn into a really nice photograph. But what if I have an image which is very out of balance in colors? So it has a very strong color cast. I took this image in Madame Tussauds, and as you can see, it was inside or indoors, and usually indoors you have a very strong warm cast on your images, cast on your images. And I have again a camera raw file and the JPEG file. This is the camera raw, that's the JPEG. It looks like there's no difference between the two, but let's check out what happens if we make our changes. So I go back to develop, and I'm going to change the white balance by selecting the white balance tool, the eyedropper tool, this one, and just simply click on the door in the background. And it automatically samples a white point from the image, and it does a really good job. So that was before a completely out of balance image, and now it looks perfect. Let's just see what happens if we do the same thing with JPEG. Again, I select both of them and I click on sync, and I synchronize it, and that's what we get with the JPEG. Okay, so again a huge difference. Let's just see again side by side the two images. I select them, and let's see. So again, JPEG and camera raw after the same changes. Again, a huge difference. Okay, this is something that you can't use for anything, but this one is perfect, even though it was a very out of balance image. Again, why? Because the camera raw has much more color information stored, and it can easily restore anything that you need. Okay, nearly anything that you need. The higher bit depth your camera can record to, bit depth is actually the difference, the number of colors that you can store in your images, and a basic camera raw file can store 12 bits on a channel, which is around 4,000 different colors. This camera can store 14 bits, but there are also cameras which can store 16 bits. So if you buy a new camera and you see the camera raw format, if you have a higher bit depth, that will give you an even better quality whenever you make changes like this. So the higher the bit depth, the further away you are from this crap image here on the left, the JPEG. Okay, so that's a good thing to know about camera raw. Now let's just go back, and now that we know the difference between JPEGs and camera raw files, I would like to show you the basic tools in Lightroom, how to develop images in Lightroom. I first of all show you something that one of my favorite things in Lightroom, and I call it selective color editing. There's no name for this, I just named it selective color editing. But if you will see why, there's an image, it's in Newcastle, a bridge, but the problem with this photograph, it can be a nice composition, but the background is really annoying and disturbing. There are so many things happening in the background which just distracts us from the bridge. What I can do, though, is to go to the develop options. So I'm in develop settings. By the way, it's good to know that we have these modules in Lightroom: library, develop, and these three other modules here on the right. Mainly, you spend your time in Lightroom in the library and the develop options. In library, you are importing images and selecting them and filtering. And in develop, you develop the images. So that's similar to the camera raw options if you work with bridge. So here on the right, we have these panels. First of all, we have the tools under the histogram. We only have 5 tools, not like in Photoshop, like hundreds of tools. Here we only have 5 tools, but believe me, it's enough. You can do everything with these 5 tools. And you have these panels here below it. I think it's 4 different panels. Again, much less than in Photoshop, but we will be able to go through most of these options soon. So first of all, I would like to show you what happens if I go to the HSR color options. I select this panel, okay? And here I choose saturation. So there are 4 different things, but I choose saturation. So I would like to change the colors of this image, and I want to change the saturation. I selectively want to increase and decrease the color intensity of on the image. But I also select a very specific tool, this one, which is called the targeted adjustment tool. If you select this one, so it's quite difficult to find out that this is a tool, but if you click on that, it will show a special cursor, so it shows that you can go up and down. Now what happens if I go up and down? I click on the trees in the background, let me just zoom a bit closer, and I click on the trees and I drag down, and it removes the colors of the trees, but without changing anything in the image. Let me do this again. I drag up, there are the nice green colors, I drag down, and the color's gone. No selection, no masking, quickly, it's just done. I click on the sky because I want to remove the blue colors, and I just drag it down, and the blue color is gone. And I even can click on the building in the background, drag it down, and even though it was similar to the red in the foreground, it kept the red, and it only removed the background. And if I want to increase the red without changing the colors in the background, I can click on the bridge, drag it up, and I have a great composition. Okay? It's really fast, without any selections, without any masking. And these options, by the way, if you want to know what happened, here on the right we can see what Lightroom did. By just dragging up and down, it changed the specific colors, the intensity of the specific colors in the image like this. So we increased the reds and we removed these colors from the image. So it's a really, really cool way to work in Lightroom. And I would like to show the same feature, so this is not the only image where you can use it. Just to prove that, I show you another one. Another image also from Newcastle, and it also works with other images, not just from Newcastle. But so I select again, remember, go to HSR, choose saturation, and choose that little targeted adjustment tool. And then let's just remove the green color, because here in this image, I would like to emphasize the sea and the blue colors of the sea and the sky. So I just quickly get rid of the green colors. I click on that and I drag it down and it's gone. And I click on the blue colors and I drag it up, and there's a very nice and intense color in the background. Now, there is also a very cool thing in Lightroom that we can see the before and afters easily. So the before and after options. Let me just go to the options here, the basic tab. And I just choose, oops. Yeah, I just choose this option. And we already use this option to see before and after. But there is also another way to see before and after in Lightroom. You can click on this little icon here and choose these 4 different options. I just go away to make sure you see it. So these are the options that we have, and I will go through them quickly. This is one of my favorite, before and after left-right split. That means we see the change on the same image, and if I zoom closer, I can move around in the image, and I can see, okay, let's see, this was before, and that's after. So even if you have lots of steps, you can see the original image and all your changes by just simply switching from one side to the other. Okay. For example, if I want to get rid of this little spot here, it's quite annoying, it's very close to the most important part of the image. So I use the spot removal tool, and you can use the scroll or even your touchpad to scroll up and down to change the size of that spot removal brush. And then if you click on that point, it will easily get rid of it like that. Now if I move back and forth, we can see there's the spot, and the spot is gone. So that's a great way to see before and after. Also much better than in Photoshop to go back and forth. Okay, let's just go to another image. I would like to show you another thing. Straightening images is also really simple, and cropping images as well. So let's just work on this image now. I would like to first of all add more colors in the shadow areas. So I use fill light to have more colors in the dark parts of the image, like this one. But usually, also remember this, usually when you increase the fill light and recovery, you will lose a bit of contrast in the image. If you want to add back a bit of contrast, you should increase also the blacks option. So now I just show you before and after. So this was before and after. So that's before and this is after. You can see that we lost a bit of contrast in the image. So if I start increasing the blacks, that will keep the colors, but it will increase the contrast. Let me just zoom a bit closer, and we can see if I remove blacks, it's a bit like faded, but if I increase blacks, it will add back the contrast to the image. We can also increase a bit of exposure onto it. Okay, something like this, maybe a bit of more on the recovery. But I don't want to spend too much time on this. I also would like to show you that you can use the eyedropper tool to set the white balance from anything that you know was a color which was neutral. So it can be gray, black, or white. The best is to work with white or gray, and usually these shades of gray are the best to sample from. So I just clicked on that, and it automatically sets the white balance. So let's just see before and after setting the white balance. This was before, and this is after. Okay, again, just find something on the image that was neutral. Okay, now to crop the image, we can use the crop tool. So from the 5 tools, we already used the spot removal tool, and this is the next tool that I'm going to show, the crop overlay. I select that one, and there are lots of options here. We have an angle option, which is for straightening, and if I select that one, that will automatically crop the image as well. So probably I will use, in this case, not a horizontal line, I will use a vertical line. So I will use Big Ben, and that should be a straight vertical line. And based on that line that I just drew there, it automatically crops the image and rotates it around. So now it's straightened. Also really fast and easy. Okay, and the great thing is that even if you crop your images, again, because everything is non-destructive, if I go back to the crop tool, it's still there. All the edges that we cropped out are still there. So even if I crop something like this, and I make a crop where we can only see the tower, like this one, and then I change my mind, and okay, I include my friend as well, I can go back, and I change it back and show him again. Okay? So that's the good thing about non-destructive workflow. So you never lose anything from your original source files. You can't do a change which is destructive in Lightroom. Okay? In Photoshop, you have to learn how to work non-destructively. In Lightroom, you can't work destructively. Okay? So that's a great thing in Lightroom as well. And I'll show you another great thing. It was introduced in Lightroom 3. This is Lightroom 3 that I'm using, and there are some new options here. This is one of them, to automatically correct the lens distortion and all the problems that we can have with the lens. If you work with digital cameras, or if you are in photography, I'm sure you heard about these nice technical terms like chromatic aberration, lens vignetting, and optical distortion. These are the things that we might have with a lens. When we take a picture, we might have these problems. But if you are not technical, you are not into these technical things, in Lightroom, we can do all these corrections automatically. If we choose Profile, that will give us the option called Enable Profile Corrections. And if you believe it or not, this option will use the metadata, and based on the lens that you used, because that is stored with the image, it will use the lens information, and based on that, it will automatically correct all the problems that you might have with that specific lens. So even if it's a very specific lens, Lightroom will know what to do with it. And if I check Enable Profile Corrections, you will see the change. So that was before. Let me just turn it off here on the top. So that's before, and that's after. Can you see the difference? So this is with the distortion, and this is without the distortion. So all the lines are now straight. And that was the problem with the lens mainly, a distortion like this. And you can see that the profile corrections found the model of the camera and also the model of the lens. So it was very specific, and so this is the way it can find what's the problem with the image. So that's an amazing option as well. And these are all Nikon lenses, and it has all the models. So whatever lens you have, it will find what to do with the lens correction. And if you want to, you can still use some manual changes by using distortion, the aberration, and the vignetting here at the bottom, if you still need to make changes. And also the spots here, we can always remove them easily by just clicking on them. So we don't need to do anything specific in this case as well. But this example is mainly just to show how you can use the enable profile corrections. And also, while we are here with this image, I can switch back to the basic tab, and I just would like to show you a great option called clarity. Now, we can see that this image is nice and sharp, but if I start to increase clarity, which is here at the bottom, you can see if I start to increase that, it will add even more contrast to the image. So let's just see before the clarity. This is how it looks without and with the clarity. Now I'm a bit overdoing the clarity, but just to see how it works. And if I go to the other way, I can even blur out the image and make a soft effect on it. That's also interesting. But most of the times I want to use this one. And I can add a bit of vibrance, and I can increase a bit of temperature in the image. And let's just see again before and after. So this was before. I can zoom even closer to it. And the other one is after. So here you can see before and after. Okay. So it's a really, really nice way to work on the image. And we corrected also the distortion of the lens. Now, I would like to show you also noise reduction, because that's also something that we have most of the times with images, mainly with high ISO ratings. So with this example, we can see, if we have a look at the histogram, we can see it's an ISO 800. This image was that took with an ISO 800 setup, which made this noise here in the background. It's difficult to see the noise on the bird, but in the soft background, because of the depth of field, we can easily see the noise itself. I can even zoom closer if you want. I just zoom a bit even closer. So now I'm sure you can see the noise in the background. And let's see what Lightroom can do with the noise. There is a panel here on the right called Detail. If I select Detail, here I can work with two different options, luminance noise reduction and color noise reduction. The color noise reduction is automatically set to 25. What happens if I set it back to 0? We will see even more noise in the image, because now it's not only the luminance noise, it's also the color noise. So let's just set back that to 25, something like that, much better. And now I start to increase the luminance noise reduction, and you will see that it will completely get rid of the noise. So look at that. I can turn this on and off, just the detail options, by switching this little switch here on the Detail tab. So I can switch it on and off. And you can see if I turn it off, this was before and this is after. And on the image, on the important part of the image, we haven't lost any detail. So that's the great thing, because in Photoshop, noise reduction always blurs the image. Okay, here in Lightroom, it uses the ISO. The changes are based on the ISO settings. That's why we don't have that much blur on the image. Actually, I would say it does an amazing job. Let's just look at this part of the image. So this is after, and this is before. So you see this part is sharp. The background is there we have the noise. And if I change it, the noise is gone, but it's all still, everything is sharp. I would say even sharper than before. Okay, so instead of blurring the image, with noise reduction, we make an even sharper and nicer image. So that's also a great thing. And one more thing, one more tool that we can use here in Lightroom, which is also, I think, much faster than to do this in Photoshop. This is called the gradient adjustment tool. First of all, before I start to use that, I just go back to the basic tab, and I would like to add a bit of light here in the shadows, and maybe a bit of vibrance to the image. So something like this. Now, after that, I select the graduated filter tool. So this is the tool that I selected, this one. And with this, I can set up a specific thing that I want to change on the image. Now, most of the changes that we did were global changes. Apart from the spot removal, most of the changes were global. So they changed everything, the whole picture. But the graduated filter and the adjustment brush are two tools that work locally. So they will make local adjustments. So that's something that also you can do in Lightroom, local adjustments. So I just have the exposure moved down a bit. And I'm going to click here on the top and drag down. And you can see that we can apply the change with a gradient. From the top, it's applied with 100%, and then it just fades out to 0% here at the bottom. I can always use this like an accordion, move it back and forth, and I can even rotate it around if I want. And while I have it selected, I can also play with the options. So I can increase the exposure or decrease the exposure. It's like adding a filter on the image later on. But the great thing is that you can even add color to it. So when you use these graduated filters on your camera, that's exactly what Lightroom can simulate for you. By clicking on the color tab here in the panel, we can choose a color. So let's just say I wanted to use, when I shot this image, an orange filter on the sky like this. And it's quickly added to the image, and also gradually, just like the exposure. Let's just choose purple or any color from here. But what I think is good for this image is this orange color, because this looks a bit like a sunset color. Okay, so we were not at the right moment when we took this image, but we could simulate the magic hour. So we just added that to our image. And just to make it even nicer, I will create another gradient from the bottom. So you can see that we have one here on the top. That little yellow or white circle represents the gradient. And I added another one here on the bottom, and I just set it up to make it, I try to draw it again. If you hold down Shift, you can draw a completely straight gradient. And instead of decreasing the exposure, I would like to increase the exposure on the water, like this. And let's just make the Tyne a nice mountain stream by changing the color to something like this. This is something that you will never see in real life. Okay, maybe in the Alps if you go there. But here we could add that color also, and again, without making selections or masking. I love masking in Photoshop, but it's quite tedious, and here in Lightroom you don't need to do anything like that. Let's just see without these gradient options. That's the original image, and that's after. Huge difference, and just using two gradients on it. Okay, so these were just a couple of examples and that I usually do, but I would like to show you that some Photoshop users say that they don't want to use Lightroom because you don't have enough options in Lightroom. So there's a limit to the creativity in Lightroom, but I would like to show you that it's not true, because even in Lightroom you can do huge changes to your images and you can create very artistic effects. Maybe I would like to turn this into a very old vintage looking photograph. First of all, I just crop it. I use the crop tool, and I want to get rid of this thing on the left side, so I crop it. By the way, you see that the rule of thirds is already there with the crop tool, so we can align the Guinness to the rule of thirds. And then I can press Enter to apply the crop. And then I can go to the Basic tab first of all and turn it into black and white. The keyboard shortcut again is V. If I press V again, it turns it back to colors. V, turn it back to black and white. Again, completely flexible, so you can always switch back between the two. You don't need to save several instances of the same image for that. So now I have black and white colors, but I would like to also have a sepia color on this. And for that, I go to split toning. We have a separate panel called split toning, where we can add a specific color for the highlights and also a specific color for the shadows. And we can quickly create a nice sepia color like this. Instead of using only one color over the whole image, we selectively added two different colors for the highlights and the shadows. And as you can see, this is nothing near the usual sepia color, these two colors. But together, the two gives us a really nice, this is called the duotone or split-toned image. And we can always use the balance to balance between the two. So if I want to go more to the shadows or more to the highlights, I can even balance between the two. So that's a great way to mix up colors onto the image when you want to do a monochrome image like this one. And then, after we have this, it still looks very digital. So how can I turn this into an old vintage-looking image? I can go to the Effects, that's another tab here in that Develop, where we have post-crop vignetting and grain. Now, grain is an interesting option. It will simulate the grain from old photographs, so it's the non-digital photographs. I can increase the amount of gray, and you can already see that grain showing up in the image. But if I increase size and roughness, you will see even more of that. Let me just switch back. So this is what it added to the image. I can turn it on and off just to see from close. So that's the grain. Obviously, this is something that you don't want to do all the time, because this is what we want to get rid of from the images. But in this case, I want to do the opposite, because I'm looking for this effect, this special effect. So we have the grain, we have the sepia colors, and now I would like to also burn the edges of the image. For that, I'm going to use post-crop vignetting. Instead of moving it down, which will darken the edges, which is also great if you want to have the focus in the center of the image, but in this case I'm going to increase the post-crop vignetting, and that will burn out the edges of the image. And it also already has that old photograph effect, but if I play a bit with these options and I use midpoint and roughness, I can come up with a really nice effect on the edges like this. Okay. So we did a huge change on the image without leaving Lightroom. And by the way, post-crop vignetting, the reason why they call it post-crop vignetting is because if I make a change on my crop, so let's just make a portrait format crop on this one, like this, press Enter, and the crop will follow. The post-crop vignetting will follow the crop. Okay? Again, something that is also completely flexible. Okay, now I already showed you how to copy and paste options between images, but I would like to also show you another way to do that. You can save this as a filter. So if I open this tab here on the left, I can save it as a preset, all these changes that I did to this image. By just clicking on this little plus sign here on the left, I can save this one as a preset. I can choose which options I would like to save, and then I can give it a name. Let's just call it Vintage. Vintage, save it. And then if I select, let's say I just select this image with Van Gogh, and then I choose Vintage, and it automatically uses the same options on that image. Okay? And if I go back to history, that's just another step in the history, which I can always go back. So I can always click on white balance and go back. By the way, here, this part of Lightroom is called the navigator, where whenever you zoomed into the image, you can use this to go to another part of the image. But yeah, but if you go over or if you hover over the history states here, you can also see the changes automatically without selecting any options. So you don't even need to click on the history states. In the navigator, you will see those changes automatically by just hovering over them. Okay, so that is also a great option. Yeah, and just one thing before the break. I think, let me check. I think I showed everything. White balance. Yeah. So these are the basic things in Lightroom, but after the break I will talk about auto-importing images. So I have my camera here, and I will show you that if the camera is connected to your laptop, you can set up Lightroom to be able to import an image. Whenever you take an image, it automatically imports it into your catalog. I'll show you how to do that, and I will also talk about filtering and selecting images, a little bit more about developing images, and I also talk about how to work with Photoshop. So the connection between Lightroom and Photoshop, working with HDR images, for example, and also with panoramic images, how to merge panoramic images with Lightroom and Photoshop. Hopefully I will be able to cover everything today for the recording. Okay, it should be working now. So, I still have lots of things to cover, and I hope I will have time for it. One thing that I forgot to show with the basic options is the tool called Adjustment Brush. This is the one that we haven't used. This one is the red eye removal. I don't think I need to spend time on that. It's just simply click on the red eye effect and it removes it. But this one is interesting, the Adjustment Brush. Now, this one is also a local adjustment. And if you select this brush tool, here you also have options similar to the basic options in the develop module. But here what you can do is to set up something, maybe a bit of more exposure, and just use this brush and draw over a specific area of the image. Okay, I just draw over her face here, and I just wait for Lightroom to wake up. So you can see that we again locally use an adjustment on the image. Instead of using it globally, we could paint over the parts where we wanted to use it. And the great thing again is this works as a mask. So if I hover over the image, you can see it automatically created a mask, and it even found the edges on the hair. It's not perfect, but it found the edges because there's an option called auto mask. Okay, so it works automatically and it tries to find the edges. And while I have this selected, I can move the exposure up and down and make changes locally to that specific part of the image. Okay, so that's also a great thing, and you can add as many local adjustments as you want. So if you have another part of the image that you want to change, you can also start a new brush by clicking on the new option here. Okay, so these are the options that you can add to the adjustment brush tool. So this is another local adjustment, and it can again be used on lots of different parts of your images. Now, another thing that I would like to show is how to set up your camera to work together with Lightroom. Let's say you are working in a studio and you would like to shoot lots of images, but you would like to also see those images right after you take the pictures in Lightroom. So how to set that up? You need to do two different things. First of all, you need to have a software and another application which can capture the images. Lightroom can't do that for you. But for example, if you have a Nikon, there is the Camera Control Pro, which is an application from the camera provider. And you need to install this application, and you need to have a connection between the laptop and the camera, like this one, the USB cable. Now, after you have it connected, you can see that it shows the camera itself. So if I turn this off, it says no camera was detected. If I turn it on, then it will find the camera itself. And the great thing with this application is that you can change every option on it. So you don't need to change it on the camera. You can change it here. But if I take a picture, before I take a picture, I just show you that I have an option here called storage, where I see record to PC. So instead of recording onto the cards on the camera, I will record to the PC. And then if I go to, also in the same application, and I go to tools, and download options. Let's just go back. So tools, download options. Here I set up a folder on my machine, the folder called Auto, and my images that I take with the camera will be automatically placed into that folder. So the laptop will download the images from the camera. And if I go to Lightroom and I go to Auto Import, so that was the first part, the Camera Control Pro, just to download the images from the camera. The next step is to have those images imported automatically into Lightroom. For that, you need to go to Auto Import, and you need to choose Auto Import Settings. So if you click on that, here you can enable the Auto Import. So you can click Enable Auto Import, and you can choose which folder you would like to watch. So you can have a watched folder, which means that from that folder it will capture all the images. Whatever goes into that folder will come into Lightroom automatically to the catalog. So I enabled it and I selected the same folder, Photos Auto. Okay, I click on OK. So now it's enabled. If I go back to Auto Import under the File menu, I can see Enabled. And now if I use my camera, and let me just go to the view where we see all our images. So I have 50 images in this catalog, and let me just take a picture of you, and we will probably see that coming up here in the catalog. So just without any specific things, I just take a quick picture, and it should come up from that folder. I hope everything is set up properly. Yeah, I can already see auto imported photos, and it's there. Okay, so I haven't had to do anything. It's automatically imported to the catalog, and we can see the images here. So everyone is sleeping in the first row. So this is how you import images, and whenever you take images from this point on, you will be able to work right away with your images. So remember, it's called the auto import option, but you need to have a connection between the camera and the laptop. Okay, that was just something that I found really useful, and I most of the times work with this option whenever I have my laptop with me. Okay, so that's auto import. Now, the next thing that I would like to show is how to, whenever you imported images into Lightroom, how to select them, select the ones that you like, and how to filter them quickly. We already talked about filtering, but let's get to more options about this one. So first of all, there is an option called flagging. So if I have a couple of images that I like, I can press P on the keyboard, P as pick, and that will add a little flag on the image. You can also click on the top left corner of an image to flag an image, or unflag if you click again, but I usually use P and U to unflag. So P adds and U removes a flag. So let's just add the flag on this one, and then I add the flag on this other one. I flag the images that we already worked on, so I quickly add some flags on these images, okay? And after I flag the images, I can again go to the library filter and choose attribute. And by searching for the attributes, we can choose flag, and then I will only see the flagged images. So it's really simple and easy to mark images that you prefer, your favorite images, for example, and then next time when you want to only show them to your family or to your friends, you can just simply click on the flagged images. Instead of going through hundreds of images, you just show your best ones. That's an option that I usually use. But you can also rate images, and you can use 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 on the keyboard shortcuts. So if I press 3, that will add 3 stars, a star rating to the image, or 4 or 5 will change it to change the star ratings. which can also be filtered. So for example, if I set this image to 3 stars, this one to 4 stars, and this one to 5, I can choose show only the flagged images and also add to the filters the star ratings. First I just added 3. Then if I increase the rating to 4, then it only shows 4 and higher. Or if I click on 5, it will only show the flagged images and also rated with 5 stars. So you can be very specific. And apart from flags and apart from star ratings, you can also use color labels. And color labels are also assigned to keyboard shortcuts. If I just uncheck these options now, so I don't want to filter with the flags and I don't want to filter with star ratings, I just simply select an image and I can click on any of these colors or use 6, 7, 8, 9, and that will add colors. Now I added a yellow color. And again, you can search by color, so you can color code your images. And I added 2 green, or 2 blue, 1 green, 1 yellow. And if I click on blue, it will show the blue colored images. If I also add green, now I will show green and blue at the same time. So you can be very specific of what images you are looking for. And just as an example, you can use these color labels. If you are doing wedding photography, you can use one color for the bride and one color for the groom's family. And you can then choose, you can remember when you sit down with the families, you can remember and mark the images, okay, this is what they want and this is what they want. Okay, obviously if you have an image which both sides want, then you can use another color for that. So that can be, for example, red, which means both. And these color labels are always, it's up to you how you want to use them. So there's no rule that green will always mean this or mean that. It's up to you. It's just like a note that you add to the images. Okay. So instead of writing down what one of the families want, just mark the images with these labels. That's a really fast way to work in Lightroom. And remember, you can always use these attribute filtering options here on the top. Now, what if you want to be even more specific and you can't use metadata? We talked about metadata filtering and using shutter speed, camera, or any of these options that we have stored in the images. We don't want to use these, and we don't want to use the attributes either. We want to be very specific. And for example, I want to make sure that next time, I can search for this image by just typing in Van Gogh, okay, by the name. So to do that, we can use keywords. Keywords are here on the right side. And to add keywords, you just simply need to type the keyword here. So I add a comma and I type in Van Gogh like this, and I press enter, and it's automatically added to this image. So it has that keyword now. So next time, if I go to the metadata filtering, and instead of the shutter speed here in the front, I choose keywords here on the top, keywords. Okay, and it will show me all the keywords that I have in my catalog, and from all of these keywords I just want to choose Van Gogh, and then it will turn up. Okay, obviously it takes time to add keywords to all of your images, but you don't have to. You only need to add keywords that you can think of something that can be useful next time when you want to look for something. Okay, so you should only save keywords for things that you might want to look for next time. So for example, I'll just show you another example. Maybe I want to have something like landscapes saved as a keyword. So I just click on none here on the top to see all the images. And I want to have a keyword for landscapes. So I select the first landscape and I type it here, landscape. Okay, I press enter. And now instead of doing this one by one on each of the images, I can select all of the landscape images like this. Let's select all of them like this. And then I go to the keyword suggestions and just select the previously used keyword. Click on it and it will apply to all the selected images. So I don't need to go one by one, and I apply it to all of them. Or even you can use an option which is also an interesting one, this little spray tool here at the bottom. If you select that, you can paint with this tool a specific thing like a keyword. Okay, so in this case, I just would like to make sure that I only copy the landscape option. So I select an image which has, let me just select landscape image, so it has that keyword, and I select the sprayer tool, and I can type in here landscape. I can just simply select it like that, and then if I hover over any of these images with the sprayer tool, I can just simply click on it and it adds the keyword landscape. So I can paint with a landscape. That's also really cool, and fast way to add keywords. So most of the time with other applications, assigning keywords is a really tedious and boring part of the catalog, and selecting or setting up your catalog. But in Lightroom, you have so many options, and I haven't even talked about keyword list, keyword sets, so there are even more to keywording. But these are the options that I usually use for keywords. And next time, if you want to show only your landscape images, you can go again to metadata, and from the keywords, just choose landscape. There's landscape, and it will show only the landscape images. Now, another thing that you can also use is collections. You can also create collections. So, for example, I just go back to none, so no filtering, and I would like to have a collection of the images I took in Newcastle. So I select these images, all the images that I took there, and I would like to create a collection from these. So I selected 4 images, and I go to the collections, and I click on this little plus sign. So I click on that one, I choose create collection. It will automatically choose the option called include selected photos, and I just type in Newcastle. So instead of having a separate folder, yeah, always Newcastle. It's one word, no? Yeah, sorry. Yeah. Okay, so instead of having separate folders, you can have the collection which is completely independent of the folders. So I can create this collection, and it will keep those images in that collection. But they are still, so it's not a duplication of these images. They are still in the original folder where they are coming from, so where the source images are. But we save the collection for them, and next time if I want to only show these images, I just simply select this collection. Now, that's quite simple, so you store images in a collection. But what if I have a new image that I want to include that collection? Let's just say that maybe this one is also in Newcastle, and I want to drag and drop it. You can do that by drag and drop it, and now it's also included in the same collection. If you don't want to have something in a collection, you can just select it and press backspace. It won't delete the image from the catalog, it only removes it from the catalog, or the collection, sorry. Okay, so you can have collections, but you can also have smart collections. Now, the smart collection is even better. So if I go to new and create a new smart collection, that means I can set up a specific criteria what I would like to look for, and instead of manually drag and dropping images into a collection, I can tell Lightroom to keep looking for images with that specific criteria, and anytime a new image comes into my catalog and it has those options that I have in the criteria, it will automatically include it in the smart collection. So let's just do this, and I'm going to choose, instead of rating, I'm going to choose, let's say, camera, and I choose is, and I'm going to type in Nikon D40. I'm not sure if it's the best option. Let's just choose something else. Maybe choose ISO speed rating is 100. So every image which has an ISO speed rating of 100 will be in this smart collection. So now I can click on create, or I can add even more criteria to it. So I can make a more closer search for specific images. So if you add more options here, you can say match all the following rules, and only then include the images in this smart collection. I will call this smart collection 100 ISO, and I save it. And there's my ISO smart collection, and as you can see, it automatically included all 20 images with the 100 ISO speed, so it's automatically there. And if I import new images, I just click on import, and let's just hope I have more images with this ISO. So I select another folder called HDR and another folder called Panorama. We are going to use these images as well soon. and I just click on import. And you can see that the ISO options already went from 20 to 25. So my Smart Collection is automatically placing the images, all the images that are using ISO 100. So it's automatically there. So you don't even need to copy and paste, and that's a really clever way. And you can have as many Smart Collections as you want on very specific things. Okay, so I talked about all the options about this topic. Yeah. Now we can talk a bit more about syncing options. Just quickly, I'll show you a couple of things here. So I go back to the develop options, and here I have these 4 images. And as you can see, they are very similar. Most of them are overexposed. So I would like to use a setting on all of them. But instead of applying them one by one, or applying it to one and then applying it to all the others, I select all of them at the same time. So here on the film strip, that film strip at the bottom is mainly visible to be able to always see all the images that you have, even if you are just zooming onto one image. So you can select all the images there at the bottom, all 5 of them, and then you can go to develop. Okay, and there is an option here at the bottom called sync, but if you turn this little switch on, this is also only in Lightroom 3, if you turn it on, you will get the auto sync option. So auto sync is now turned on. That means if I make changes to this image, but I keep selected all the other ones, it will be automatically assigned to all the selected images. So let's just see that. I'm going to, first of all, go to basics, and my favorite one is recovery and fill light to start with, so I'm going to do that first. In this case, I would like to decrease the exposure of the image, and see here at the bottom, they automatically changed the thumbnails as well. So just keep an eye on this one, and I make a big change. I change the exposure on this one, and it's automatically applied to all of the other ones as well. Okay, so let me zoom a bit closer to it, make sure everyone see this. I change the vibrance on this one, and it changes on all the other ones. Okay, so the auto sync means that you are working at the same time on 5 images. Okay, so let me just set this up properly and use a bit of fill light for the hair, and maybe we can add a bit of temperature change on it. We can add a bit of clarity, and also usually I like to darken the corners, a little bit of vignetting on the corners, something like this. Let's just see before and after, and set it to before and after, right and left. That was before and that's after. But if I go to another image, you can see it's automatically there because we had the auto sync on. So all the images are using now the same options. Okay. And you can imagine if you have a photo shoot, when you have the same settings and you have 200 images, you just simply need to select all 200, do one, and apply the auto sync, and then you're done with 200 images. So that's really fast, much faster than to do this in Photoshop. In Photoshop, you can save actions, but much more difficult than to do that here, than to do it here in Lightroom. Okay, so that's auto syncing, also another useful thing. Now, I would like to also show you something that you might find also useful. It's called virtual copy. So what if I would like to have 2 different versions of an image? So 2 different two different presets or a way of developing images. So I would like to have this image, first of all, changed in a normal way. I just simply, again, make changes on the exposure, a bit of the recovery, fill light. I change a bit of the color temperature. We can also use white balance from the ship if we want. And I'm going to use the crop. I just turn this panel on the left, and I use the straighten tool on the bridge, something like this. And we can also get rid of those spots there. And you can see how fast you can be with Lightroom. So that was a quite fast change from the original to the edited image. And I would like to keep this, but I would like to have an even more artistic or dramatic version of the same image, but while keeping the same one here. So what I can do is right-click on the image and choose Create Virtual Copy. Create Virtual Copy we'll create a copy, but without duplicating the source file. So once again, it's just a separate metadata line saved with the same original source file. But here in Lightroom, it looks like two different images. So we can see that it looks like this is one and there is two. And it even marks it with a little fold that shows that that's a second version. Okay? And if I select that one and I go back to develop, I can add, for example, my favorite graduated filter tool, and I add it here on the sky, darkening the sky like this, and let's just add some nice colors to the sky, something very surrealistic, but it looks cool, so something like that. And then I also want to add a bit more blacks to the image just to make it even stronger, something like that, even more vibrance to it, make it like a painting, something like this. And I can now see another spot there on the top. So it looks, again, very different. But if I go back to the previous image, this is the other version, which is also better than the original one. But now I have two versions, so I can always decide which one I would like to use. Let's just say I would like to have a third version, so I right-click again and choose Create Virtual Copy. So now we have three different versions, but still only one source file. So not duplicating the file means that you don't need more file storage space on your computer, just using one source and different versions of the same one. And I would like to, for example, turn this into black and white and just keep that graduated filter on the top. If you have a graduated filter with the color and you turn your image to black and white, the color of the filter will stay. Okay, that's independent from the colors of the image. Okay, and maybe I want to add even more blacks to it and maybe change the color of that gradient. I just select it and change it to something like this. Okay, so again, a completely different version, and we can add another gradient, for example, from the bottom, and also add the color to that, and maybe turn the exposure up there. So, okay, again, another artistic version of the same image. And we can go back original one, which is more like the photorealistic one, and then the other two artistic versions. Okay, and we can even select all of them together. And if we are in the library mode, we can choose this option called Survey. In the survey view, we can see all of them at the same time and decide which one is the best. Okay, so this is also a great way, the virtual copy, if you want to do different versions from the same image. And now I'm going to talk quickly about how to output images. We only have two topics left, output and Photoshop integration. Now, to output images, let's just say I'm really happy with this image, and I would like to save it out. So I would like to save this and use it on a website, for example, or maybe I would like to print it out. For that, you can go to File and choose Export, or Export with Preset. You can also choose these presets, but I usually go to Export and set it up manually. So here you can choose where you want to save it. I'm just going to save it to the desktop. Then you can choose what kind of name you would like to use with the file. I use the original name. And then you can choose the file format. Now that's the important part. You can choose JPEGs, PSD, TIFF, DNG, which is the camera raw, the Adobe's camera raw file, or the original file format. So you can choose from these, and if you choose JPEG, you can also set up the quality. So the smaller you set the quality, or the smaller the quality is, the smaller the file size will be as well, but you lose quality. So it's like a balancing act. Usually I keep it around 60. Okay, now the other thing is the image sizing, which is also useful. You can say you would like to resize to fit a specific size, so you can tell that you need something smaller than these sizes. Okay, if you want to save it for your website, for example. And obviously, if you have more images selected, you can save out a whole bunch of images at the same time using the same settings. Okay, and you can even choose this option. I really like this option called Output Sharpening, and you can decide whether you want to use this image for print or web. If you want to use it for web, then you can choose Screen, so sharpening for screen, or sharpening for a specific paper. because for matte and glossy papers you need different type of sharpening, and Lightroom automatically knows what kind of sharpening you need. You just need to select it. Okay, so you don't need to know all the technical things behind the sharpening, you just need to select it. Okay, and if you want, you can even add watermarks and all these options, and then you can even save this as a preset. So next time if you want to use the same settings, you just need to click here on add, and then you can use this as a preset next time when you want to save out something. If you click on export, here on the top a little bar will show the export itself, and it's a good thing to know that while you are exporting in Lightroom you can still work, so you don't need to wait for the export. More than that, you can even start 2 or 3 different exports at the same time. Okay, so then you will see 3 little bars, progress bars. Okay, so that's also a very useful thing. So this is how you save out your files, but there is also a way to save specifically for print. If we go back to these modules, here on the top I just opened the modules. We already talked a lot about library and develop, the 2 first modules, but we now go to slideshow, print, and web. Slideshow is to save like movie files that you can show on the laptop and use it for a presentation. Print is used to save it into a specific print format. And here you can set up everything that you need for the print. You can find all the options that you need for the page size, for the color profile that you need for the printer. You can even add an identity plate. So you have all these options here. This is where you can find the print sharpening as well and color management. I don't want to get into all these options. What I would like to show you is that you can use picture package. If you have an image that you would like to have in many different formats, you can do that by having this film strip at the bottom and drag and drop an image from the film strip and then place it on this sheet of paper. Then drag another image and put it onto the same page. But you will see that with the picture package option, you can only have one image, but you can have it with different sizes. So it's like the one that with like the images that we use for in the documents when or after graduation you have these different sizes of the same images. That's what you can do in this option. So you can change the sizes and you can have different sized images. That's what we call a picture package. You can even rotate these around, and you can have as many versions as you want on the same page. By holding down Alt, you can duplicate the images. So you can make sure that you use the whole paper and you have all the sizes that you need from the same image. We can even fill up this place with smaller versions of the same image. Okay, so this is picture package, but there is also the contact sheet option. If I select more than 1 images, I selected 4 images, and I go back to the print options, and I choose the options for the layout. Instead of having only 1 image per page, I increase the rows. And then you will see that we have 3 images printed on the same page. Or if I increase columns, it will create a grid of images. So that is under the print contact sheet. If you want to print more images on the same page, you can set up a grid, page grid with columns and rows. And it depends on how many images you select. It will create as many pages as you need. So in this case, I had selected all my images, and it created 3 different pages for me. Okay, so that's also a really fast way, and then you just simply need to click on print. Now what is even better is the web module. That's the last one. You can create really cool Flash websites without touching any code in Lightroom. So for example, I just select these 5 images. Let me just select these images. Okay. And I selected 6 images, and here on the right under the web options I choose Lightroom Flash Gallery. Here in the middle we will automatically see the gallery, and this is what I can upload to the internet. It's already created a working Flash Gallery. So here I can set all the images. It even plays my watermark at the bottom, and it has all the options. So this looks like now Lightroom, but you can go to upload and upload this to your server. If you have an FTP server, you just need the username and password, and it automatically uploads. Or you can store it in your computer if you choose export options. You can also store it in your laptop. And you have so many options for this. So this is just the default Lightroom Flash Gallery. But you can use, for example, Airtight Simple Viewer option for the same images. And then it creates a gallery like this. When again, we have the images in a Flash Gallery. Okay, imagine this is on the website. So it's automatically created all these options. You don't need to do anything. You can even use this Airtight Postcard Viewer. Then it creates something like this, where you can set up the columns. For example, I just set up, in this case, 9 columns. And then it creates something like this, where I can click on the images. I can use the keyboard shortcuts as well to move between the images. And you don't need to do anything. So you don't need to know about Flash at all to be able to do Flash galleries. Okay? And it's all also in Lightroom. And you can download plugins. If you want to extend these layout styles, you can download plugins. You can find them on the internet. There are some really neat ones. Okay. By the way, if you spend a lot of time on Facebook, it's a good news that you have also an option for Facebook. If you go to Library and you select images, here we have the Publish Services option, where you can save directly to Facebook from Lightroom or Flickr. So you also have these options, Facebook and Flickr. I don't want to spend time on that. We don't have internet connection here, so I can't show that. But the last topic that I would like to talk about is the Photoshop integration, which is a really interesting one. Let's just first, I will show 3 different things. Why do we need to go to Photoshop? We saw so many cool stuff in Lightroom. What else can we do in Photoshop that we can't do in Lightroom? There are actually 3 things that usually I go to Photoshop from Lightroom. First of all, if there is something that I can't get rid of from an image, which is very complicated, something that is a difficult retouch, and I need to use clone stamp in Photoshop for that. So for that, I usually go to Photoshop, but you will see there's a very close integration between the 2 applications. So all my changes that I do to an image in Photoshop will automatically come back to Lightroom, and it will store it in my catalog. So that's one thing. The other thing is, if I want to merge panoramic images, I also go from Lightroom to Photoshop and then back. And the third one is HDR, high dynamic range images. So let's just first start with the retouch. And I just try to find an image which I would like to do. By the way, before we go there, I just show you a quick example. This is also one of my best examples for Lightroom. Just an ordinary tourist photograph from the airplane. But what if, on the way to Turkey, by the way, Osgur, do you recognize this? Okay, so I'm going to crop out the parts that I don't want to include in my image, and I'm going to create something like this. I make it a bit more panoramic format, something like that. So make sure I don't see the wings and I don't see these edges of the frame. So I click now on Enter. I get rid of these spots again. I see one more there. I can't see more, so that's enough for now. And I'm going to change the temperature on the image and add blacks to the image, just to have contrast, like this. I use a bit of exposure change as well on the image, something like this, and recovery. Maybe a bit more exposure. And I increase the vibrance just to pump up the colors. That's a bit too much. Something like this, and maybe a bit of saturation as well. So it looks already much better, but now comes the final touch. I'm going to the gradient filter, and I turn the exposure down to 0, and I click on the top and drag down, and maybe that's a bit too much. Let me just change it back. After I applied it, I go back and I change the exposure a bit, and I would like to see something like that, like an image shot from a satellite. So as you can see now, it looks more like a space photograph. And we can see before and after from this shitty image. Actually, we don't see the wings and the corners of the frame or the window, but still you can see it's a huge difference. You can also see it like this. and compare it from the original to the changed version. Okay, so that's just another great example what you can achieve in Lightroom. What I wanted to show is the clone stamp tool, and for the clone stamp tool, let me just go back to library, and I get rid of my filtering, and I go back to the Lightroom images, and I'm looking for this image, and let me just quickly change a bit this image, and I would like to turn it first of all to black and white, and I go to develop options, and here I increase a bit of the fill light just to see more details, and also increase the exposure. Can you recognize this place, Mark?
Is that room C or room A?
It's in the training rooms. No, it's downstairs.
All of our training rooms are like that.
Yeah. It's downstairs, by the way, downstairs.
That's our receptionist.
Yeah. Yeah, so
It's also Martin's girlfriend.
yeah. So if I want to get rid of these lines in the background, that's something would be really difficult to do with these options in Lightroom, like the spot removal tool. We can try to do it, and it will try to get rid of it, but it's not the best way to do it. So for that, we can go to Photoshop, and I just want to show you, I won't do the whole changes. I just go to Photoshop by right-click, Edit in, and choose Edit in Adobe Photoshop CS5. So it will open up the same image in Photoshop, and in Photoshop I can use the clone stamp tool to remove these parts, and if I save the file it will go back to Lightroom. So all my changes will update in Lightroom. That's the very close integration between the two applications. So we just need to wait for it. It's quite a big file, camera raw file. And you can see Lightroom, how fast Lightroom is. Even with one image, Photoshop, we had to wait a lot of time. So if I want to get rid of this here in the background, okay, I can use the clone stamp tool, and I can even create a new layer. I usually use a new layer when I do retouch. Just make sure you have the sample set to all layers in Photoshop with the clone stamp tool. And actually,
but instead of using the clone stamp tool, I think it would be better to use the spot healing brush tool. Let's just try that, also using sample all layers. And I'm going to draw this part quickly over, and let's see what happens. Probably it will blend together, but maybe not the best way. Yeah, I can still see a bit of leftover there. So I'm going to use the clone stamp tool, and I just quickly draw over these parts. I don't have time now to properly do this, so let me just select colors from around this part, and I try to blend it in. As I said, if I have more time I would do it properly, but now I just quickly draw over it like this. And the main reason why I did this is to show you how you can turn this back to Lightroom by choosing File Save. Make sure that you use File Save and you don't use File Save As. So you need to make sure that you use File Save. And if you wait for a bit here in Lightroom, you will see that the saved version will come back. So we will have two versions. We have the one that we started with, and next to it we have the changed version. So that's the retouched version, and I can always go back to Photoshop to continue editing it by right click again on it and choose Edit in Photoshop. So that's the way we work between Lightroom and Photoshop if we work on or we want to retouch images. But now I will show you how to work with HDR images. HDR means high dynamic range photography, which means that or whenever we need to capture the extremes, very bright and very dark details, in this case bright background and dark foreground, instead of having one exposure, we take several exposures, and later here on the computer we merge them together using a special algorithm to use all the details that we captured with each of the exposures. Obviously the underexposed version will capture more details on the sky and the mountains, and the overexposed version will show more details on the forest. So we will use all of these information and merge it together. Okay, so let's just have all the images selected here in Lightroom, and then you need to go to the photo menu, and under photo choose edit in and choose merge to HDR Pro in Photoshop. Once you select that, Photoshop will open up and these images will be loaded into Photoshop. So it will create separate layers, but these layers are going to be merged together, and the merging option or adjustment is called HDR Pro, and that's a big dialog box here in Photoshop, which will give us lots of options to customize this merging, HDR merging option. So in that dialog box at the bottom we are going to see all the 5 different exposures, and we will already see a merged version of the image. So this is the default merge option, and it's already much better than any of the exposures separately. The first thing that you need to do is to get rid of ghosts in the images, which means that whenever something is moving, like here in the clouds, we see that movement between the exposures. So that's something that you can get rid of by choosing the remove ghosts option on the top of the dialog box, and you can see the clouds. It's much better now that we use this option. The first thing that I usually start with is the detail. If you start to increase the detail here in the tone and detail options, that will make the whole image more sharp and crisp. But of course, if you increase this to way too much, you will have too many details that you don't need. So it's you can see the effect, but this is something that I usually keep somewhere in the middle, and I usually start with, after changing the detail and setting it the way I want it, after that I use gamma, which is very similar to shadow highlights in Photoshop. It's increasing the brightness of the shadows and decreasing the brightness of the highlights. So I keep it somewhere there, and using the exposure I increase the overall or global exposure on the image. So this looks much better now, and we can add more vibrance just to emphasize the colors of the image. And then last but not least, I usually increase also the radius value in the edge glow options, which will make a very nice painterly effect. As you can see, this is how it looks after using the radius. And let's just look at before. So I click here on the bottom on radius just to see before, and now again after. So concentrate on the image. That's the difference. So it blurs the details on the image a bit together, but still keeps it nice and detailed. And with strength you can also add a bit more contrast to the image. Now I clicked on OK just to merge the images ultimately into an HDR image. And there you have it. It creates the document, and it creates or converts all these exposures into one HDR image. Now, just like with the retouch, if we save this using the file save option, we will see this the same HDR final result right in Lightroom. So I just save it, and I go back and switch back to Lightroom. And you will see next to the 5 exposures, there's already the saved version from Photoshop. So you can see the 5 exposures, and at the end there's the HDR that we just created in Photoshop. And now the last example will be also another interesting one. It will be also images from Newcastle of the Tyne Bridge. It's a panorama, which I again took several images, and I would like to turn this into a panoramic image. So you can see I have 6 different portrait format images, and these are the images that I would like to again get selected here in Lightroom and then merge them together in Photoshop. And once I'm ready with them, I can come back here in Lightroom and make more adjustments. The reason why I have portrait images for panoramic images is that with these you have a much taller image at the end than if you take landscape images. You can imagine that with landscape images you will have a much more narrower image, while with portrait images you have a much taller format. And the only thing you need to be careful is that you have at least 10 or 15% overlap between each image. And it's not a problem if you don't have a stand with you. So even without a stand you can shoot panoramic images, because Photoshop will do all the alignment and blending on these images. So everything will be completely automatic. So I just go to Edit in, Merge to Panorama in Photoshop, also under the photo menu, just like the HDR options. Of course, after selecting the images that I would like to merge into a panorama. And here in Photoshop we will get again a dialog box where first of all we can set the alignment option, which I most of the time leave on auto, so you don't really need to change that option. And Photoshop can not only align the images based on their contents, but it can also blend them together if you have the blend images together turned on. Now if you don't want to see the edges between the images, then you need this blend images together option turned on. And usually I also use geometric distortion correction, so I just turn that on as well. It's good when you shoot in panoramic images. So you will see that now Photoshop again loads in all these images into one Photoshop document, and it will search for the overlapping elements to align them based on their contents. So it's already working on the alignment, and you will see the aligned image with the edges between the separate images. There are the edges, you can see the edges, but now it started working on blending, and you will see again this is completely automatic. It will completely get rid of all those edges, and you can see now we have a seamless composition of the whole panoramic image, which we made from 6 separate portrait photographs, so you can have a good look at it. So that's the final result, but we can go even further in Photoshop, because we can merge these layers together. I just use Command or Control E to merge them together, or you can use Flatten Image. And once you have that, you can create a separate layer just below this image, fill it with white, and then merge them together again. So now we have that white color in the background, and I would like to select that. With the Magic Wand tool, I just set the tolerance down to 0. And with that tolerance I will be able to easily select the white background. So now I have the whole white background selected, and I go to select and choose modify, expand, and expand my selection by 10 pixels. You can see this is before and after, so I expanded the whole selection by 10 pixels. And now that I have this, I go to edit and I choose fill. This is a CS5 new feature called Content Aware Fill, so I choose the option and then I just simply click on OK, and you will see that Photoshop will do the magic from this point on. We don't need to do anything after this, because Photoshop will create or will come up some new contents on the edges based on the edges of the original image. So it will automatically fill in those parts, and that's why we call it content aware, because it's based on the content of the image. I think that's amazing. So instead of cropping out the image, we could fill in the empty areas on the edges. I think that's a great feature. And now once again I save this option, and we will already have the panoramic image here in Lightroom. So I don't even need to wait for it. I just go back to Lightroom and I see the panoramic image here, and we can finalize this image by changing the options here in Lightroom. So I just play with the fill light, recovery, vibrance, and the temperature, and we can also add the graduated filter on the sky, the usual thing that I do. We can also add a bit of color to it. Let's just use a bit of magenta there, or orange on the clouds. Use another gradient on the river, and then that nice blue color to it, and so on and so forth. We could work on this image and go back even to Photoshop, make some changes there, then come back again here. For example, I would get rid of that rock on the left, definitely in Photoshop, so I would go back and make sure that I get rid of that one, and probably also that line on the right is a bit disturbing, so I would also get rid of that one in Photoshop. But that's all what I wanted to show in Lightroom, and I hope you enjoyed this presentation, and I hope you will spend some quality time with Lightroom, and you will find it exciting, interesting, and useful for your own work and to work with your photographs. So thanks a lot for your attention,